Thank you. I appreciate that. Thanks, Claire. All right. Looks like we can start to get this evening started. I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order at 6:02 p.m. for the 16th of June. Before we get started with our agenda, if you'll join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Right. Thank you very much. So we'll go ahead and do a roll call. And Ms. Trimble, whenever you're ready to do a roll call, please.
All right. Anderson?
Present.
Becerra? Absent?
Sorry, yes, Becerra
Campbell?
is absent.
Campbell's here.
Carlino?
Present.
Farmer?
Absent.
Jones?
Present.
Jordan?
Present.
Nelson?
Present.
Nugent?
Absent.
Absent. Savage?
Present.
Cheryl?
Present.
Masika?
Present.
All right, and we do have a quorum this evening.
All right, thank you very much. So we have minutes from June 9th, 2025. Any changes or questions for the minutes this evening? I'm not seeing any. All right, those minutes will remain as submitted. Thank you. And then we have our committee schedule for June 18th, this coming Wednesday. Claire, do we have any changes to the committee schedule?
I don't believe so.
Okay. All right, looks like committee meetings start at 9 in the morning and will last until around 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Of course, for members of the public, all those committee agendas are located on the City Council agenda webpage. All right. Well, that wraps up item number 3. We'll move on to agenda item number 4, which is special presentations and proclamations. And our first proclamation is Juneteenth Independence Day. And Ms. Trimble will put that up on the screen so you can read along as I read aloud here. This is a proclamation with the Missoula County and City of Missoula. Whereas Missoula County and the City of Missoula acknowledge the lasting impacts of racism in the United States, fueled largely by the horrific institution of slavery, and whereas news of the end of slavery did not reach frontier areas of the United States for more than 2 years after President Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation of January 1st, 1863, and months after the end of the Civil War. And whereas on June 19th, 1865, Union soldiers arrived in Texas with news that the Civil War had ended and the enslaved were free. And African Americans have celebrated this anniversary, known as Juneteenth Independence Day, for more than 150 years to honor African American freedom while encouraging self-development, respect, and dignity for all people. And whereas the character demonstrated by former slaves should inspire us in this country to give thanks for our freedom won by so many people in all nations, and to strive for the goals of bringing freedom and democracy to people of other countries, no matter what their race or religion. And whereas, although Juneteenth Independence Day is starting to be recognized as a national and even global event, the history behind the celebration should not be forgotten. And Montana proudly joins the 50 states and the District of Columbia in observing Juneteenth as a state or ceremonial holiday. Therefore, be it resolved that we, Missoula County and the City of Missoula, do hereby proclaim the 19th of June as Juneteenth Independence Day to commemorate African American emancipation from slavery, celebrate the freedom won by people in many countries, and rededicate ourselves to the cause of liberty. I'll also mention that Juneteenth is recognized as a City of Missoula holiday. So the city offices will be closed. There is a celebration of Juneteenth at Fort Missoula, and that is hosted and organized by the Montana Black Collective. And generally that's in the 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. window there at Fort Missoula. Hope to see you there. All right. And then we have a second proclamation this evening. And this proclamation, I'll start reading it aloud here. Whereas the city of Missoula has partnered with the National Wildlife Federation to promote the creation and conservation of wildlife habitats throughout the Garden City. And whereas our local pollinating hummingbirds, bees, beetles, flies, moths, and butterflies are essential for maintaining healthy, biodiverse ecosystems. And whereas pollination allows plants to reproduce food that form the foundation of the food chain for other species, including humans. And whereas pollination plays a vital role in the health of our forests and grasslands, which provide forage, fish and wildlife, timber, water, mineral resources, and recreational opportunities, as well as enhanced economic development opportunities for communities. And whereas the act of gardening for wildlife promotes sustainable gardening practices, such as soil and water conservation, organic practices, and control of exotic species, all of which help to restore healthy soil, air, and water that native pollinators rely upon. Now, therefore, I, Andrea Davis, Mayor of the City of Missoula, in the state of Montana, do hereby proclaim the week of June 16th through the 22nd, 2025, as Missoula Pollinator Week. Councilor Jordan, you wish to say a few words?
Yeah, thank you.
You bet.
We did talk a little bit about bringing forward a slightly different proclamation related to Pollinator Month, but this one was already on the books and it covers a lot of the things that I've learned in my day job, which is about just making pollinator habitat. And I think the importance of pollinator habitat because it saves water and encourages native and endemic species, but I also just really appreciated the efforts of the Missoula County Department of Ecology and Extension, working with residents who've been impacted by like the greenways or the boulevard updates and paving, and they've gone in and worked with those folks to help them replant their boulevards with native plants and ones that are pollinator friendly. So I just thank you for reading this, and I think it's just a really neat body of work that is complementary to a lot of different issues. So thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you. Thank you for bringing it forward and your interest. And there's a lot of beautiful natural pollinator places along in our community. And it's great to see. There's a lot of really interesting bees out there. All right. That wraps up our special presentations and proclamations, and we do not have any public hearings this evening. We do not have any new business either, so that will bring us to the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda were approved in City Council committees to be placed on the consent agenda to save time at council meetings by voting on them as a package. The city clerk will read the list aloud, so citizens watching on MCAT will know what is on the consent agenda. We'll invite community comment on these items before we vote.
All right, good evening. On this evening's consent agenda, we begin with a motion to approve accounts payable or claims for checks dated June 17th, 2025 in the amount of $1,945,334.40. We have a motion reappointing Emily Schenkel as a regular member of the Affordable Housing Resident Oversight Committee, also known as AROC, with a new term beginning immediately and expiring on May 31st, 2028. We have a motion to approve and authorize the mayor to sign a rental agreement between the Western Montana Mental Health Center and the Mobile Support Team for a period of July 1st, 2025 and ending on June 30th, 2027 at a cost of $1,000,000 $1,605 per month for the first year of the lease, with a 3% increase each year of the lease. We also have a motion to approve and authorize the mayor to sign a rental agreement between the Crisis Intervention Team and the Western Montana Health Center for a period of July 1st, 2025 and ending June 30th, 2027 at a cost of $1,000 per month for the first year with a lease and with a 3% increase for each year of the lease. We have a motion to approve and authorize the mayor to sign the professional services agreement with Voith Engineering for the Burlington Strand and Kensington Avenue Water Main Project at a cost not to exceed $81,670. We have a motion to approve and authorize the mayor to sign the professional services agreement with DJ&A for the Lolo Street Bridge Water Main Replacement Project at a cost not to exceed $86,807. And finally, we have a motion to authorize the mayor to sign the Lolo Street Bridge Project interlocal agreement between the city of Missoula and Missoula County.
All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate that, Ms. Trimble. So the consent agenda has been read aloud. Do we have any public comment on the consent agenda this evening? I'm not seeing any in the room. Is there any online? Any public comment on the consent agenda online? Okay, not seeing any there. Do any council members wish to separate any item? No. Okay, then we can go ahead and take a voice vote on the consent agenda, please.
All right, on this evening's consent agenda, all in favor, say aye.
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 And any opposed? And that passes unanimously.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much. So under regular business, we do have a couple of committee reports that will be discussed. And the first being 9.1C Committee of the Whole. And this is 9.1CB, a resolution calling for the method of city elections and considering whether or not to hold primaries in any offices on the ballot. Councilor Cheryl.
Yeah, thanks. That was in my committee. That's Committee of the Whole. And we want to vote on these separately, but I'll go ahead and read them both. Does that sound okay?
That sounds great.
Okay, great. I recommend that we approve a resolution of the Missoula City Council calling for the city municipal government 2025 primary and general elections to be conducted by mail ballot. That's the first one. Additionally, I recommend that we approve a resolution of the Missoula City Council calling for the city municipal government nonpartisan primary elections for races with 3 or more candidates reported by the county elections office to be the offices of mayor and Ward 2, 3, and 6 partial. One of them's a partial term, and 6 to be held on September 9th, 2025.
Okay, thank you. So motions are on the floor, and before we come to council questions or comments, I'll see if there are any members of the public that wish to comment on this agenda item. Any public comment? Okay. Not seeing any in the room, and I don't see any hands raised online, but give folks a minute here. Okay, I don't see any members of the public raising their hand. So now this comes back to council discussion and or questions, and Councilor Cheryl.
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to make some brief comments on this. This is what we have done in previous elections since I've been on council. The mail-in ballot has a high turnout. It also is cheaper. So I'm supporting that for that reason. And as far as municipal elections with 3 or more candidates in the race, I think that's important because ultimately, if you narrow it down from 3 or more to 2 by the general election, then any person that gets into office is elected by at least 50.1% of the voting constituencies. And I think that's really important. I think that if we were to run an election that could be divided by 3 or 4 or 5 in some cases, because we have some pretty big races that are happening, then not even 50% of the voting public would be electing those people. And I think that's just not, I don't think that's serving democracy. So I am happy to support both of these. It is also not a derivation of what we've done in the past. It's exactly what we've done since I've been on council. So hoping everyone will support it and we can move forward with the most cost-effective and, in my mind, democratic way to run an election.
Thank you for your comments. Councilor Vasika.
Thank you. I just wanted to let the public and city clerk know that I will be abstaining from the first vote, deciding on the primaries for 3 or more in the race. I found myself going back and forth, figuring out there's pros and cons for each different way to do it. But since I'm directly going to be affected up by it because of my race does have 3 or more in it, I found myself being a little bit biased, and so I didn't want to have that interfere with my vote. And so since it doesn't directly affect me, I'm just going to abstain from that so I don't have any personal bias in that vote. And while I do appreciate the council's willingness to save money, I'm always all about that. A lot of my constituents and even I myself do think that in-person voting is the most secure way to run an election. So I will not be supporting that, but I completely understand the reason why there is a push for all mail-in. So I'm going to be abstaining and then voting no. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Councilor Vasika. And I did want to just make sure I understood that the motion that you will abstain from is the motion that is calling for elections for races with 3 or more candidates reported by county elections offices to be the offices of mayor in wards 2, 3, and 6. Is that correct?
Correct.
Great. All right. Any other council comments? Oh, thank you. Councilor Anderson.
Sorry, I'm like trying to log in and get my thing. Appreciate that. I will be supporting both of these. I appreciate what President Cheryl said. And I just want to push back slightly. There is no evidence that shows that in polling or voting in person is any more safe or secure than our mail-in voting. And I think that Bradley, who is our elections administrator here in Missoula County, has done a really outstanding job of really having lots of transparency, opens up and has tours on how the whole process works. And, to date, there has not been any evidence or studies or to show that one is better than the other. And it has been shown, however, that higher mail-in elections have a higher voter turnout because people are able to take a bit more time to fill out their ballots. They are better informed because they can research, and they're not encumbered by only trying to get to a particular election site on a particular day and time with all of the things that come up in our daily lives. So I will be in support of both of these and appreciate bringing them forward.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Any other council comments this evening? All right. I'm not seeing any. Then we can go ahead and do 2 separate votes and do a roll call vote for each if we could, Ms. Trimble. Thank you.
All right, beginning with the first one on the agenda, a resolution calling for the primary and general elections in 2025 to be conducted by mail ballot. Beginning with Anderson.
Yes.
Campbell.
No.
Carlino.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Jordan.
Yes.
Melson.
Yes.
Savage.
Yes.
Cheryl.
Yes.
And Vasika.
No.
And that has 7 in favor, 2 opposed, and it does pass. Moving on to the next item for voting, we are a resolution to conduct primary races for any race that has 3 or more candidates, which is office of mayor, Ward 2, Ward 3, and the Ward 6 seat that is filling a partial term. Beginning with Campbell.
Yes.
Perlino,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Jordan,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Savage,
Yes.
Cheryl,
Yes.
Basika,
Abstain.
and Anderson.
Yes.
That's 8 in favor, 1 abstention, and that does pass.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Thanks for the discussion. That item is wrapped up. We'll move on to the next, which is 9.1.d. And this is under the Housing, Redevelopment, and Community Programs Committee report. And so I'll look to Chair Jones.
Thanks. I'll put the motion on the floor, which I move that the city release the condition attached as part of the sale of a portion of the Scott Street parcel from the city to White Pine Parcel LLC, requiring completion of a daycare agreement, including the construction of a space suitable for a daycare facility, and direct the mayor to complete such steps as are necessary to waive this requirement or any substitute requirement relative to youth programs from the purchase and sale agreement and related documents. And I'd like to speak to it when appropriate.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much. So the motion's on the floor, and we'll ask for public comment on this item before coming back for council comments. Is there any public comment on this agenda item? Okay, not seeing any. How about online? Yes, Carrie Schreiber, I see you there. Carrie Schreiber, I'm going to unmute you. Hopefully you can unmute yourself there. And I'll go ahead and time you from this side. No, there are 3 minutes for public comments whenever you're ready.
Oh, I don't have 3 minutes prepared. Thank you for taking my call. I just got to acknowledge that this is a disappointment. I understand that it's been studied carefully, but with all the public input, with subsidies, with the donated land that was associated with this project, with how hard the north and west side has fought to get this park and to get amenities that will make it a positive community. It's really sad to hear that not work out. And we talk about downtown as the heart of Missoula a lot. I think of north side, west side, and then my part of town as the kidneys. And the kidneys are important too. And I just really wish that this would have worked. It would have been a great community amenity. That's all I have to say. Thank you. Oh, and happy Pollinator Week. That is absolutely beautiful. I have a pollinator garden myself, have at least 5 different species that I get to watch every day, and very glad to hear the Juneteenth gathering. I'm looking forward to hearing those speakers. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments this evening. Any other members of the public online that wish to make public comment on this agenda item? Okay, I'm not seeing any. All right, that wraps up public comment for this item. We'll bring it back to council comments, and we'll start with Councilor Jones.
Thanks. I think disappointment is a great word. This is definitely a disappointment that we can't effectuate this. Everybody really wanted to see a daycare in that space. I think it was aspirational, which was great. But a lot of work has gone on to try and make it happen. And the bottom line is someone will not step in to sign the lease, to make that commitment so that all of this project can go forward. And so until we address this, the project isn't going forward. And we took 2 months, we hit pause and took 2 months and did a deeper dive into really casting a bigger net to see if there were any daycare providers that could come into this space.
The United Way headed up that working group. We had the Missoula Child Care Advantage and Montana Advocates for Children. And they couldn't get it over the finish line for a variety of reasons that they came in and spoke in committee last week. So it's not for lack of trying. It's not that it wasn't an awesome idea. It's that it doesn't work at this point. And sometimes we have to back it up and go in a new direction and acknowledge that we tried and we failed in this one. So going forward, we got to get this project moving. I think it really speaks to a bigger issue, which is how important it is to have the developer in at the beginning of these conversations with adjacent neighborhoods to really make sure that these aspirations are realistic and achievable, because it's sometimes we shoot a little bit high. I love that about Missoula, but sometimes we got to regroup then and address this. So to me, that's this situation. And we had a lot of folks come in last week and discuss this extensively, and there weren't any yeses out there. Sometimes that's what happens in the community. There weren't any yeses to get this across the finish line with people who are willing to sign the lease and to make it happen. So we tried, we couldn't get there. I'm at this point very supportive of we lift this agreement so that we can go forward with this groundbreaking project on the north side, which is a lot of achievable housing for some folks. So I'm happy to get it moving forward and support it.
Thank you for your comments. Councillor Jordan.
Thank you. Yeah, disappointing is the word of the evening. I'm disappointed that we are allowing a developer to get out of a commitment that they made when they signed the contract. I think that perhaps there are some other avenues we could have explored, like building the space and leaving it available and workshopping this some more. I do think that the developers always win in Missoula, and it's at this point at the expense of a much needed service that our low-income families are not, we're going to move low-income families into these permanently affordable spaces, but they're not going to have any place to put their kids. And so I think that the trade-off has been a little short-sighted. And, I remember a colleague of mine last week saying that we can't create such high design standards that developers won't sign a contract. But in this instance, they signed the contract and now they're getting out of it. And I will be voting no, but I'm sure this is going to pass and that they will be allowed to get out of this. And so I just think that we didn't explore all of our options, and we're still letting low-income families down by not holding a developer accountable, who is most certainly going to make a lot of money off of this.
Thank you for your comments. Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I too echo the sentiments of Councilwoman Jordan in this. I would say this was more than just aspiration or hope, though. This was inked and signed and put in the contract as a deliverable, and they're not delivering. We had that national community survey some months ago, and was brought up just in committee last week from Parks and Rec, highlighting how important the community feels and values childcare in the Missoula area, and yet here we are with this particular situation. So I think for me personally, I'm not going to speak for the body, of course, but me personally, I'm going to be more mindful going forward on what we call deliverables when we have agreements such as this. That said, I do think Councilmember Nugent is not present this evening. I think he did the due diligence, did the hard work to try to work with folks that might not have been included from the get-go, with United Way and other folks involved and other stakeholders. And I think, the avenues were adequately explored to, try to piece this situation back together. Unfortunately, it didn't happen. It's not meant to be, but again, in my mind, it keeps going back to, we're here, we're dealing with this here tonight because it was put into a contract as a deliverable, and now, we gotta go back on that. So I'll be voting in support, but just disappointment overall.
All right, thank you for your comments. Councillor Carlino.
Thanks. The cost of living in Missoula is skyrocketing,
Thank you for your comments. Councillor Savage.
Thank you. I just wanted to say briefly that as someone who sat in a working group with the developers for 3 years, along with Mr. Nugent and Ms. West when she was on council, we asked them very hard questions. We had many contentious meetings with those developers. We went to the mat several times about this and about many other things with this project. And I can say that there were many times when the developer could have pulled the plug and they didn't, and they hung in there. And I think Dale could attest to that. We've been in the room with these people for a really long time, trying to make this work and trying over and over and over again as the market shifted, as a pandemic was ending, lots of different things. I agree with Mr. Campbell, it was aspirational. Neither you nor I were on council when this was written. I think there were a lot of aspirational things about this project that came from neighborhood wishes. But at the end of the day, I think what the neighborhood wants is affordable housing. And I think they want quality affordable housing. And that's what they're going to get out of this project. We even went back, as Ms. Jones said, 2 months, looked back into it, went back to child care providers, went to Parks and Rec. I mean, we tried everything to make this work. And it just doesn't work. At the end of the day, it just doesn't work. So I will be voting in support of this, even though I agree it is very disappointing. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Councillor Anderson.
Thanks so much, Madam Mayor. I was on council when we signed this, and I think that the point that Ms. Savage just made in regards to the changing circumstances of the environment in which we find ourselves in. I mean, it was 2020 when we signed this. The full, understanding of the pandemic, the costs, building costs, labor costs, everything has skyrocketed, and we have seen that here at the city budget, and I know that individual home budgets have been affected by it. And I really don't agree with the sentiment that we're letting the developer off on this. It's building a space and letting it be empty because there has been no childcare provider willing to come forward to say, yes, I want to operate this space. Loved the movie Field of Dreams, but that's not real life. You don't build it and they will come. You work with somebody from the get-go to design the space, and it has been known that it's out there and available, and yet no partner has stepped forward to work in conjunction as a provider for this. So, I mean, obviously we are disappointed, but it is not us just sort of like throwing up our hands and being like, oh gosh, darn shucks, we wish this would have worked out. It's the due diligence has been done, the hard work has been done, and you know, maybe it's a lesson to be learned in the future about signing things and deliverables. But I also want to continue to be aspirational and hope that things, you know, can come together, and understand when sometimes things are outside of our control and they cannot, and recognize the situation and not just stubbornly hold forth on a plan just because we would like it to be such. Have to live in the land of reality sometimes, and unfortunately these are the hard decisions we have to make. And but we want to continue to move this project forward, because as Ms. Savage said, affordable housing is the #1 issue facing our community, and this project will provide permanently affordable housing for residents going forward. So that is a win for sure for our community, so I will be in support of this.
Thank you for your comments. Any other council comments on this agenda item? All right. I'll just take this moment to also share a few things from the administration, and would agree that it is wonderful to be aspirational, and we need to continue to be so. And we also need to make sure that we help set realistic expectations for what can be accomplished. As we all know, this project has lived through the era of the pandemic, where we have seen record-setting inflation, global inflation, when it comes to construction costs. So the very fact that this project is still continuing is a huge win for the community. The amenities that will remain there are a new park. We're going to have bike lanes, and we're going to have sidewalks, and people will be able to get around more easily. In addition to the commercial space that the developers are building, that was also an agreement made part by requests from the neighborhood and an agreement with the city. Those commercial leaseholders have been able to commit to those spaces, and that's why that works for the financing. But as you have heard from the childcare providers and others, there was nobody that was a childcare provider that was able to commit to that financial commitment. And it's a very challenging thing. It doesn't mean we should stop trying to make this happen. But one of the things that that I am leading to try to activate our lands more effectively is the Mayor's Task Force on City Lands Redevelopment. We're having 5 meetings. We've had 3 of those. And part of it is really being able to tap the expertise from folks that are builders, people that are in finance, people that are in legal that handle bonding, people that are in like I said, construction, developers, both nonprofit and for-profit, as well as representatives of local government. So we can develop a strategy. I can develop a strategy that gets these lands developed quickly. We activate these lands, and that when we want to accomplish something like a childcare space, that we have a financial plan to be able to do that. Because I agree, this is an excellent investment. The city is invested in childcare, as you know, through our Parks and Rec after school program, as well as the monetary contribution to Childcare Advantage. And we really stay committed to that. And we're also committed to not increasing the cost of living for our existing residents through an increase in taxes, which was what it would require for the daycare space on this to move forward. So with that, we'll go ahead and take a roll call vote.
All right. Voting on the motion to release the condition attached as part of the sale of the portion of Scott Street parcel from the city to White Pine Parcel LLC, requiring completion of a daycare agreement, beginning with Carlino.
No.
Jones.
Yes.
Jordan.
No.
Nelson.
Yes.
Savage.
Yes.
Cheryl.
Yes.
Sika.
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
And Campbell.
Yes.
That's 7 in favor, 2 opposed. That carries.
Okay, thank you very much. That does wrap up our regular business under committee reports. Thank you very much. And now we'll move on to public comment on non-agenda items. Anybody wishing to make public comment on non-agenda items, you're welcome to come on up now.
BK, Montana. I'll start off with some positive news. The garbage dump of Orange Street exit has been cleaned up. I just checked the website on the posting of the garbage dump on the Orange Street exit that I looked through last year. Took a ride by this Sunday and it's cleaned up. And you got an email from me in regards to I'm reaching out of black dark money of the facility in regards to shamanism. I'm going after the money, the financing of the embracement of advocating, empowering, and embracing. And the fact of the matter is, who's all involved in the shamanism, hatefulness that's equivalent to that N-word that I hear and I speak of others. What's the problem here? No different than Salt Lake City, just a stench as a rotting corpse. Oh, I was riding by Broadway on Dollar Rental Agency. There's a garbage dump already developed there, whether they're still residents and so forth. The residents are moving in along the river, along the trailway. As when I ride bicycle on the river trail there at Silver Park, our farming practices wouldn't have been as they are, and we wouldn't have never owned the farm as we did, as what was laid out on fresh gravel as a roundabout to the problem. We'd have brought the backhoe in, dug out the problem, and re-graveled it as you did on the roundabout. Is that a little advertisement that you don't know what you're doing as a city? And another thing, I've been riding bicycle, and I mentioned it last week. The streets in certain areas of riding bicycle, I'd rather ride the gutter, and I do ride the gutter because it's more smoother than the rough pavement covering that you do on the roads. When I get fatigued, my legs notice it, and I know the resistance of the pavement. The ignorance of these bicyclists that tell me that I don't know what I'm talking about speaks volumes as the ignorance of the society. So anyhow, I noticed these corners, the gutters, what are not stable through the heavy traffic and so forth, what is problems. You got to be really conscientious of where the wheels are rolling on your bicycle because you may drop into a problem as a problem child. You know, I'd rather ride in from East Missoula against traffic and ride the real tracks.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Montana. Any other public comment this evening? Any other public comment in the room? Okay. Not seeing any in the room. How about online? Any public comment on items not on the agenda? Okay. Not seeing any there. So that does wrap up our public comment on items not on the agenda. Thank you very much for coming down. Next, we have communications from the mayor. And I just want to share my deep condolences to the family and friends of the Minnesota lawmakers who were targeted in a targeting, political violence. It is really disappointing to see people taking to such extraordinary levels of violence in order to feel they're right. This is a country where we have fought hard for the opportunity to share our perspectives. That's why I recognize the Army's 250th day celebration. That's why we have military forces that have guaranteed democracy. And it's just, there's no place for that. And it's really something that is just, it saddens me. And thank you all for serving in public office. I appreciate you stepping out, being public. There certainly is no place, Missoula has no place for that hate. And I hope that this is we won't see any more of this in our country, because it deeply saddens me. And it is good to see that 2 of the 4 that were shot appear to be stabilized, which is good. It's a good thing to hear. And then with that, I would say that thousands of people gathered downtown Missoula on Saturday, and it was a peaceful protest. There was no drama to speak of, and that is something that I find to be incredible. Thousands of voices that were coming to share their concerns, their fear, their anger, their dreams, and we did so in a safe manner. And so I just want to thank Missoulians for that care and that care for one another. I really appreciate that very much. Okay, that's going to wrap up my comments. I'll start here in the room with Councillor Savage.
Thank you. I just have 2 quick things. Last week, we had a kiddo get hit by a car in front of Lowell School on Phillip Street. Just a reminder, kids on bikes are hard to see. Kids in general are short. They're hard to see. Go slow around those areas. We don't have a 15-mile-an-hour speed limit around our schools like some communities do in Montana. I wish we did. I think it's sometimes out of our hands with that, but as far as I understand, the kiddo was taken to the hospital and was injured, but is okay. But I know school is out, but there are a lot of people biking and a lot of pedestrians, particularly downtown. So just urge caution with everyone. And the second thing I wanted to say is that I was really proud of our town for the protest. It was really encouraging to see that many people. I had my bike with me, and so I didn't want to walk with my bike the whole way. And so I hopped in, and then I jumped out, and then I stood there, and the people just kept coming. I mean, which was really, really encouraging. And one other moment that I just think, to echo it was peaceful. It was also felt really community driven. I happened to be standing by someone who wrecked on their bike and maybe hit a similar spot that you're talking about, Big K, but fell over, and people quickly surrounded her. There were ice packs. Someone called 911. We waited with her. There was just a lot of community in that moment, and I just really, really was proud of Missoula. So, thank you.
Nice. Thank you very much for your comments. Councilor Cheryl.
Thanks. I was just going to add, if you have not seen the drone footage, or not drone footage, but the footage from, I think it's from the Wilma building, of everyone coming around that corner, like, it's shocking how many people were there. I'm really proud of our community as well.
Thank you. Councilor Anderson.
Yes, thanks, Madam Mayor, for your comments in regards to the assassination of lawmakers in Minnesota. It is unspeakable, and there should be, we should all be appalled, but unfortunately in this day and age, it is something that happens more frequently than I think any of us are even able to comprehend. People should be able to serve their community in a variety of ways and not have to worry about their own personal safety, or in the instance of the one couple, the safety of their children, and having to use their body to shield their own children. And that should be unacceptable to anybody who has a soul. The rhetoric, it was so, the juxtaposition of that happening on Saturday, while also millions of people gathering across the country to peacefully protest, and the only reports of violence are people who did violence to the protesters, not the protesters themselves. They were peaceful here in Montana and across. Unfortunately, some people felt the need to do violent acts to those protesters, but for the most part, the protesters themselves were peaceful and exercising their First Amendment right, which is one of the freedoms we have in this country. And so, yes, I wasn't here in Missoula for the weekend. I was actually up in Kalispell attending a funeral, and there was a very large crowd there. I heard there was 100 people in Libby. I think there was like 2,000 different communities that held protests all on Saturday. So just once again, displaying for the world how democracy looks, but yet at the same time, some of their flaws came out and showed as well on Saturday. So my heart's definitely with the lawmakers and everyone who serves, who fears violence. That should not be a part of. There's many things that are called or asked of us in public service, and being fearful for our own safety should never be one of them. Thanks.
Thank you for your comments. Counselor Nelson.
Yeah, I'll pile on and recognize just how horrific the events on Saturday, the politically motivated assassinations, were in light of everyone exercising their First Amendment rights. There's also something I want to just give everyone a heads up on that I've been tracking really closely, and that is a budget provision included in the reconciliation package on the Senate side that would sell off 3.3 million acres of America's public lands. I think this is a really horrible and short-sighted idea that doesn't do what it thinks it's set out to accomplish, which is to balance the federal budget. All of us here in America have something very unique in that we inherited 640 million acres of public land when we were born in this country. That is our shared birthright. It's uniquely American that we have protected public lands like this. And I mean, Western Montana is comprised of a lot of public lands. We are surrounded on all sides here in Missoula by federal public lands managed by the Forest Service. And it is so disheartening to think that we can balance this massive budget by selling off these things that we all hunt and fish and explore and hike and bike, and that make up the economic bedrock that this community relies on. So just to give everyone a heads up out there that may or may not be listening, but some folks are trying to take your land from you. And I think we should try and prevent that from happening. So get on the horn to our senators and specifically our senators right now as this is making its way on the Senate side. But yeah, that's it for me. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Counselor Carlino.
I'll pass tonight. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. And Counselor Jordan?
I'll pass, thanks.
Okay. Counselor Jones?
I was up in East Glacier this weekend, lucky me, and there was a great rally up there on Saturday, and I think there were between 70 to 80 people out, which I think that basically means every single person who was not working at East Glacier was out at the rally. So it was just impressive to see a small community have that amount of people out cheering and waving at everybody, and all the cars were honking. So that was great. My other piece of news is that Logan Pass is open.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yes. And it's beautiful.
Wow. All right. 2 cars or just 2 bicycles?
2 cars.
Wow. Early season this year. Okay. Thank you. Counselor Campbell?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll pass it.
Okay. Thank you. And Counselor Vasika, do you or Ava have a comment?
Ava has been talking a lot, so I'll try to make it quick. I did want to agree that the political violence that happened over the weekend to those Minnesota lawmakers, that is absolutely horrible, horrendous. There's no place for that in America. I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. There's no place in America for us to have that type of violence. It is unforgivable, and I strictly, absolutely condemn it. And then piling on to what Councilor Melson was talking about with public lands, I had a constituent reach out to me because at the beginning of June, you got to get your hunting license for the next hunting season. And so to do that, you have to get your conservation license. And you're not allowed to use fishing accesses in Montana unless you have a conservation license, which does cost $2, but you still have to go through the act of purchasing that. And this constituent said that if you have to pay to use it when we already pay our taxes, then it doesn't feel like public land anymore. So I have to agree with that. And if any lawmakers in the Montana legislature are listening to this, there are a lot of unhappy folks with that addition to the FWP licensing costs. So just wanted to share my opinion on that. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much for your comments. And I do believe that wraps up our council comments. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and adjourn the meeting at 6:56 p.m. Thanks for coming down tonight.